Hey friends, welcome to the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We're your hosts and resident foodies, Epicureans, and lovers of all things travel and exploration.
I'm John, and I'm a certified somm and a certified specialist of wine, and I've worked in the wine and hospitality industry for over 10 years.
I'm Tara, and I've worked in the wine industry for over 7 years, both in hospitality and digital marketing.
When my wife and I first met, we bonded over our love of eating, drinking, and traveling the world. That passion has only grown over time. Now we want to share this passion with you from an insider perspective. We're only scratching the surface here, and we have a lot more in store that we can't wait to share with you all. Grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and enjoy the journey with us. Cheers.
Hi guys, welcome back to Taste Toast Travel. I'm Tara.
And I'm John.
And we have a very salacious little story for you guys here today that has to do with one of our favorite things, which is
Wine.
That's right. So we are going to talk to you guys and share a little story about the greatest wine fraud in history.
Can't wait.
Get excited.
Can't wait.
I am going to be divulging this little story today. For anybody here who happens to listen to My Favorite Murder, we are obsessed with that podcast. This is very My Favorite Murder-esque today, although a little bit of a spoiler, you totally know this story, so I'm not going to be surprising you with pretty much any of the facts here today.
I do.
But hopefully for anyone here listening who has not heard of this crazy, crazy story, this is going to be a really good one for you guys today. I'm very excited for this. It kind of revolutionized the way that wine is, what would you say? Like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, not kept track of, but like
Authenticated?
Authenticated is the word I was looking for. Thank you very much. And regulated. Regulated is also the word I was looking for. Yeah. So it's a big one. So, shall we?
Yeah, please.
Get into it. All right. So, just to set the stage here a little bit, imagine you spend $500,000 on a bottle of wine, give or take, and
Yes.
It's so relatable.
Monday
right?
bottle.
But it's not just any bottle of wine. It is a legendary vintage. It is rare. It's perhaps something that is very difficult to get your hands on.
It better be.
Yeah. And now imagine you are uncorking that bottle, swirling it around, all the things, breathing in those beautiful aromas, and you take a sip and realize that it is ultimately nothing more than basically a blend of several cheap wines.
Yeah.
That actually happened. And that is the core of this story today. So we are going to tell you guys the story of Rudy Kurniawan. I'm about to mess up his last name. Kurniawan. Yeah. So yeah, essentially he is a con artist that completely fooled wine experts,
Everyone.
sommeliers, the wine elite. He made millions off of all of this and almost got away with it. But he made
They always almost get away with it.
Almost. Yeah. For anyone thinking about doing this, don't bother.
Or quit while you're ahead.
So true.
Then you'll get away scot-free.
Yeah, learn from Rudy's mistakes. So, yeah, this is a story about deception, obsession with wine and luxury wine, and this wine world that is very much built on trust. And I think a lot of people don't even understand how much that is the case until you hear a story like this, where perception is really like reality, or so it seems, right? So before we kind of dig into Rudy's story, let's set the scene here a little bit and talk about just the world of wine for a moment. So this is a billion-dollar industry. And to understand how Rudy pulled off one of the most elaborate frauds in history, I think it's good that we talk about a little bit the world that he sort of infiltrated. Again, ultra exclusive fine wine industry. And in this world, and by the way, every source that we're mentioning here is linked in the show notes. Mostly the documentary Sour Grapes, highly recommend if you have not seen it. That's where a lot of our story is coming from today. But I mean, really, this world of wine, it's, you know, a symbol of power and sophistication. And I even remember when we watched this documentary, just like some of the there's like the scene with like the guys in the van and they were like swirling wine in the van. Oh my God, they just seemed like so pretentious.
Oh, the douche level was just like
Off the
through the roof.
freaking
Yeah.
charts. Yeah. And their status symbols, it's their investments, their pieces of history, and we'll get more into what
Yeah,
I
the
mean
other
by
yeah.
that in a moment. But it's crazy. And let's just talk numbers here for a second. I have some crazy kind of stats here. So the fine wine market is estimated at over $500 billion, with single bottles sometimes selling for six figures at an auction.
Oh, total.
Crazy. Crazy. Take okay, so Romani Conti, for example. So depending on your level of wine knowledge, may or may not know Romani Conti, the Burgundy wine. Actually, you can probably speak to this better than I can. It's very rare.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the rarest wines. Very small production.
Yeah.
Romani Conti is a very small vineyard in Burgundy, and Domaine La Romani Conti owns it. It's a monopole.
DRC, you might hear that.
Yeah, DRC, Domaine La Romani Conti.
Yeah, might hear that.
And so basically, like, that domain, they own Romani Conti, right?
Right.
That monopole vineyard.
Okay.
It's a very small, I can't remember the exact outline of how big it is, but it's so small.
Really?
Yeah, so small.
So you're saying wines that come from like that little area are like, it can be super expensive, or what? Like, what's so special about that little area? I don't know.
I mean, so yeah, so Burgundy is like, in basically, what is that? Northeastern France.
Right.
And you have Dijon in the north, Beaune in the south. And the kind of ribbon of land in between those makes up Burgundy for the most part. There's stuff north of that and there's little stuff south of that, but that's what makes up kind of like the Burgundy that most people know.
Right.
And they call it the Côte d'Or, which means the golden slopes. And so they're just those slopes are just kind of like bathed in sunlight throughout the day in the growing season, and the soils are completely different, as you go foot by foot. There's
wild.
So the monks started to, because no other reason other than they were just simply bored. The monks they were planting grapes in that area, and they were literally just bored, and they're just like, let's take our time and like plant grapes places and kind of study it and see how the wines taste from different places.
Oh, how funny.
And so they started planting grapes all over this area, and they started to make the wine and taste it, and they were noticing like the wine tastes different from here versus over here. And sometimes those distances could be just like meters, 2 feet, 3 feet.
Wow.
And so they started to put walls up around these different places, like stone walls.
Oh, I've seen those. Okay, yeah.
So they put up these stone like walls around the outlines of these different plots. So they know like, oh, this wine makes this flavor, or this area makes this flavored wine, this area makes this. And so those walls have not changed since then.
And that was hundreds of years ago? I mean, like
a long time ago.
That's amazing.
Like, I don't know, I can't remember exactly how many hundreds of years ago, but we're talking like 1500, 1600, and it's the same wall outlines that these monks made back in the day. And these vineyards are still the same, like Romani, La Romani, there's La Tâche, Echezeaux, like all these very famous vineyards. Clos de Tart by Ponceau, which we'll get into. Very famous monopole.
I did not put that together that was where that from.
Yeah, very, very famous. And so,
foreshadowing.
yeah, and so they've been the same since
The dawn of time.
those monks started to study it. And they
Wow.
have it all written down in their logs and their different abbeys of
Oh.
like, this wine tastes like this from this area. This soil is different over here. They're like 2 feet away. This is, this soil. And then over here, this is this soil and it's completely different.
Mhm.
And so over time, it just kind of became what it is today, Burgundy. And you can get like very broad, like this is a Burgundy wine from all this different area blended together. Or you can get like super, super specific where it's like, this is from this little monopole called La Romani. And it's literally like 0.7 acres and it's like itty bitty tiny. And like it makes just a few, barrels of wine and it
Wow.
sells for through the roof.
Well, okay, so 1945 vintage sold for
Great year.
fi
The war ended. Great year. Great wines.
You may as well have been alive back
Great
then. You're
wines.
such a
I
baby-girl
was.
half the time. $558,000.
Oh, and a steal at that.
And it's yeah. Well, because some people are probably like, "What? Like, why?" You know what I mean? So, thank you for that context because I certainly did. I mean, I knew some things about
Well,
Russia
especially a
and all of that.
45 because I mean, the Nazis came through France and basically took all the wine.
Right. No, so, like, all joking aside about the, like, end of the war and all that, like, legitimately, like,
Yeah, I mean, the
that's
Nazis literally did come
that's a huge
through,
deal,
came
actually.
through northern France,
Right.
and they decimated Champagne and took all the champagne, and then they made their way through the rest of France and took all the great bottles of wine. And so it was like, the war was just ending in the 1945 vintage. Like, I can't even imagine
Yeah.
being like a vintner in 1945 or 1944, and you're like thick in World War II, and you're just like, just gotta make my wine. And
Yeah.
like you go out in the vineyards and you're just doing your shit. And like
Well,
you're like, I hope I get to keep it. And like
yeah, can
you
you
have
imagine?
your wine in the barrel and it's aging, and then the war ends. You're like, oh, thank God.
That's
And you
crazy.
got all this
Or
great
somebody that
wine.
the Nazis didn't find or something, or yeah.
Hmm.
I've read books on that. Wild. Anyway, well, thank you for that sidebar. That was actually very interesting. Oh, then Chateau Lafite, which you might also be able to speak to as well, but we'll spare it for now unless you
Chateau
have
Lafitte's
anything like,
great. It's from Bordeaux, but it's still good.
oh, it's Bordeaux. Okay, interesting. So, so I'm gonna read this, but I have tea on this later. So it's a Chateau Lafite 1787,
Mhm.
a bottle supposedly once owned by Thomas Jefferson, which fetched over $156,000.
Oh, it's not as much as I thought it was.
No. But here's the thing, and this is what our sources say, us working in this industry, we also kind of know, and then this documentary, definitely hammered home. Um, Wine authentication is a lot built on trust. But I will say, and I think we definitely got this from the documentary, like there are procedures now. There are forensically ways that people can
Yeah.
now figure out if bottles
Yeah.
are legitimate or not. And
Sure.
you see some of that in the thing,
Sure.
which is really cool. But there's like no serial numbers, no government regulated verification. Maybe now there is, but I mean,
Not
like
really.
not really though,
Not really.
right? So
There's really no way. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's no way to like, because you can counterfeit everything now.
right,
You can
exactly.
literally recreate anything.
Well, it's a perfect segue into the story 'cause
Yeah.
what
Like,
happened?
I'm not just talking about the liquid in the bottle. You
Oh,
can
no, yeah,
recreate labels in the bottle. You can just recreate it all.
right. That all being said, because of all of that, this is like a scammer's dream, right? They can, I mean, on paper, in theory, they could like thrive in a
Yeah.
scam like this, which
So
is
I've said this
what happened.
before, but like, it's a very, yeah, like you're saying, a scammer's dream. One, because everything can be replicated and counterfeited.
Yeah.
But two is because these wines that people are faking and creating, they're the least consumed wines in the world.
Right. Good
So
point.
nobody ever drinks these wines because they're so expensive. And wine is one of those things is once you drink it, it's worthless. And so when people uh, buy these wines, they don't drink them because, they just spent $12,000 on this bottle of wine. And they're like,
Right.
when am I ever going to
I'll
drink this?
collect this.
Usually what happens is people buy the wine for 10 grand, keep it for X amount of years, and then they sell it and make a
And
profit.
make a profit. Yeah.
So these wines are literally going bad over time because nobody is drinking them.
Yeah.
There's a famous interview with the winemaker for, he passed away, but he was the winemaker for DRC, Domaine Romani Conti. And he said he's just sad because nobody drinks his wine. Everyone buys his wine and keeps it and then sells it, and then the wine eventually goes bad.
So it's all about the money.
And he's like, I make the wine for people to drink and enjoy, but no one ever drinks it.
I could cry.
I know, the poor guy. And he was so old when he said that. He was so old.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what I'm saying. It's all about like the prestige and
But yeah, that's the
no.
problem is like these wines, they make these wines, and some of these wineries will sell them for $100 a bottle, $200 a bottle, and then
Right.
they see them in an auction for $2,000 a bottle. It's like,
Yeah.
they're just pricing out. It's like the 0.01% of the population even gets to try these wines.
Oh my God, if that, I feel like.
I've tried DRC.
Have you?
I have.
What vintage?
72.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Where'd you have that? England?
I had a friend that his family collected wines in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s.
Wow.
And they filled a cellar full of wine and they died, and now it's his. And we went to Trip Gary one year, and we went to lunch, and he brought a couple bottles of wine. He brought a 72 DRC Latache, and he brought a 61 Mission O'Brien.
Okay.
And they're both great.
Oh my God. Wow.
Who you know?
What? Yeah, it literally is. Well, again, you're segueing very well into my bullet points here. So who was Rudy Kurniawan? Let's talk about that, because his inner circle, all of this was like very, I feel like, critical to understand like who he was connected to and how this all kind of, I don't know, blew up. So, if you want to describe him, he's young. Some sources consider him charming. I don't think he was charming. But also just a kind of generous newcomer to the elite wine scene. This is in the early 2000s, by the way. No one really knew where he came from. Basically, he just told people he was from an ultra wealthy Chinese Indonesian family. He's flush with money, and he's ready to spend it on the world's finest wines. Like, he was just big into fine wine. And how it came off, at least, or I guess this is apparently the reality, at just 25 years old, he had more or less unlimited cash. Although I think in the documentary it said he had he said he had an allowance of $1 million a month or something for wine. It was like some
I don't know.
crazy stupid number.
This tale all this time with these guys is like, they put the perception out that they have this infinite amount of money, but they owe money to everyone.
Right.
And like, they don't actually have all this money, and people are calling in their debts and like, oh shit, I don't have any money.
Yeah.
It's how it always happens.
Yeah.
The
Well,
perception.
that is definitely partially how he got in trouble, and we're gonna divulge all that. But yeah, I mean, but I will say, and this was, I think, said by at least one or two people in that documentary too, was that he had just this impeccable palate. So whatever other bullshit he did know wine, and he apparently had a really good palate.
Yeah, it comes with drinking. The more you drink, the more you learn.
Yeah, you said that in one of our episodes.
It's the truest thing. The more you drink, the more you learn about what you're drinking.
Yeah.
And this guy had access to the world's history's greatest wines. And so, you're tasting these wines day after day, like, you're going to remember what they taste like.
Yeah.
It's like drinking a Coke. Like, you know what a Coke tastes like because you've drank it a bajillion times.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I think we covered that in like our how you kind of became a som episode. Definitely go check that out if you guys are curious about it. But yeah, I mean, I know people will sometimes ask you like, how do you develop your palate? And like, oh, you
drink a lot.
Must have be a super taster, smeller, whatever the hell it is.
I'm not even a super taster. I did that litmus paper test.
Yeah.
Not a super taster.
Like, I'm no one special.
Yeah, no, I'm not special. you too can
Maybe
be.
there are super tasters out there. I don't know, but I feel like it's a
It's
lot
not
of
like perfect pitch. It's just like
right.
you taste a bunch of wine and you just remember it over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Not trial and error, but just repetition, I guess. Yeah.
It's just you remember it. I'm trying to think of like something that I could equate to it. It's just you remember what it tastes like.
Yeah.
It's like you go to your restaurant that you really enjoy. You get that meal. You know what it tastes like. You've had it before. You're like, I want that again.
Yeah.
And so if you blindfolded, you put a blindfold on you and you taste it, you'd be like, yeah, this is that, whatever, whatever you
Mhm.
like. It's just, if you taste wine over and over and over and over, you just remember like, oh yeah, that was that like 67, Chateau Petrus I had.
Right.
I remember that wine. Like, it's just, that's how wine blind tasting is. You go through the Rolodex of all the wines you've ever tasted, and you're like, what does this remind me of? I can't even tell you how many times I did a blind tasting where I'm tasting a wine and I'm like, shit, I've had this before.
Right. And you're kind of just
And I'm
like almost
sitting
flipping
there
through
and I'm
your
just like,
wine.
what is it? And it's like that song that it's like on the tip of your tongue. You're like, what is that? And it's just like that until you
Yeah.
either give up and look at the card or you're just like, you're like, oh, it was this wine.
Right.
So
Yeah.
many times.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately what made Rudy stand out to a lot of people too is, he didn't just collect the wine, he drank it and he shared it and wanted it, I guess
Mhm.
one could say. And they even said, he would walk into, Michelin star restaurants and order a $100,000 bottle of DRC,
Mhm.
and just like casually pour glasses for people at the table. I also thought it was so interesting, this documentary. There's so much footage of him. And I literally remember saying to you as we were watching, I was like, because we it was so spoiler alert, we had watched this documentary years ago when it came out, and we were like rewatching it, kind of like, reacclimating ourselves to this topic. And I was like, how did they have all of this like random footage of him? Like, I just wonder who was taking that. They never really, it was a rhetorical question. It's just funny.
Mm.
Like, anyway, they have these like random, but it is very interesting. There were some very interesting things caught on camera as
Yeah, there's a
well.
lot of foreshadowing.
There's a lot of foreshadowing. So, fellow wine collectors just adored him, auction houses really trusted him, and really, like, no one questioned where he was getting these wines that he could just, like, magically source, so it seemed. And he really wanted to be, like, a key big player on the wine auction scene. And even as the one of the main guys that was kinda, like, interviewed in this documentary, Jeff Levy, who is a director, I think, in Hollywood, like, I think his nickname is even Hollywood. I was like,
Mhm.
"Eye roll, okay." But he even said, quote, "His breadth of knowledge seemed to be pretty extraordinary," and that he just, like, had this amazing palate, like I was saying. And he yeah, so there's a lot of scenes, it's interesting, of him at these auctions, and there was one instance where he was in an audience. What do you call people that are bidders?
Yeah.
This is not really an audience. Anyway, he was there and they were auctioning off bottles of Domaine Ponceau, and I guess what had happened, like, one had just gone for, like, $1,000, and he was just like, "Oh, I just opened that bottle, like, on Thursday night, quote, 'Can I refill it and put the cork back in?'"
Mm.
Like, joking, but we looked at each other and we were like, "Or freaking shadowing,"
Mhm.
because yeah, we'll get to that shortly. So, yeah, I mean, he really just kind of, like, revolutionized the wine market. So they said he skyrocketed prices because of the way that he was behaving at these auctions, and it was just really interesting. But there were multiple red flags. One was that Rudy had access to these wines that even the most seasoned collectors, that's a word, collectors couldn't find. And Bill
Coke.
Koch, I always wanna say, like, Koch, but that's not
Coke.
Bill Koch, who is a billionaire. He was heavily interviewed in this documentary as well, and he was saying too that he was just like, I had been oh, no, actually, no, I'm sorry. It was another guy who was like a Burgundy,
Just a burgundy
like
connoisseur,
aficionado,
and
like
he
he just
loved the wine, and he was
yeah, and
like,
he's
"I've
like,
been searching
"I've
for these
even"
wines for 25 years."
and I couldn't even find them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just like, well, okay, kind of crazy. Who is this guy? So basically, here's where the cracks start coming in. So as I was mentioning, this is all like early 2000s. So fast forward to 2008, Rudy made a very critical mistake. He tried to auction off bottles of Domaine Ponceau Lo Saint Denis. Did I do okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
My French sucks, so I'm surprised that went as well as it did. Claiming that they were vintages from 1945 to 1971. The problem was that Domaine Ponceau didn't even start making Clos Saint Denis until 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And then wasn't there something about a Magnum? Or was
He-
that it? Or was that a separate situation?
It might be the same.
Do you
I just remember he made a bottle of wine, a Magnum that they didn't make in
Right.
that vintage.
Yeah. So,
Or he didn't make it, but he was selling it.
right. Yeah. Well,
He was auctioning off a
or
bottle
was he making
of
it?
wine a Magnum of
It
wine
like
that
that never existed.
they said they never made.
Right. So the owner of Domaine Ponceau, what the heck is this guy's name? I'm totally like the one thing I didn't write down.
Mr. Ponceau.
That was, that was a serious fail, you guys. Anyway,
Monsieur Ponceau.
Mr. Yeah, let's go with that. Anyway, he caught wind of this and he was like, I am gonna go talk to this guy. I'm gonna figure this out. Like he literally hopped on a flight from France to this is New York. Right?
LA.
Is this LA? No, LA. To talk to him. And his plan was sort of to like befriend him so he would talk. So what's crazy when I first like heard this story, even remember this, I completely forgot about this whole part about Rudy's connections to Indonesia and his family potentially being in some
Mhm.
stuff as well. So basically, it's really interesting. So owner of Domaine Ponceau flies to LA. He confronts Rudy about where he gets these wines. Rudy says that he got the wines, I think either in Jakarta or someone from Jakarta. He brings up Jakarta, right?
Mhm.
So Rudy gives the owner of Domaine Ponceau 2 phone numbers. He originally said one was like a fax number, one there was no answer. But after actual investigators got involved, one was for Lion Air, which I don't even know if that's like that literally sounds like Larry Air from
Yeah.
Schitt's Creek. Like not even real.
I think Lion Air is like the
It's like a
most
Indonesian
popular Indonesian airline.
Yeah. Lion Air. And then a strip mall was another. So here's the key about this strip mall though. Because this had come up before, more specifically, I think like a hardware within this like
hardware
strip
store.
mall thing. So in this investigation, as they're digging into this, they're realizing that one of Rudy's relatives, like he either owned like the whole strip mall or like this specific hardware store or whatever.
Yeah.
So Rudy now has a direct connection to this strip mall situation. So jumping around a little bit, but Bill Koch got a PI who was a former CIA agent, and he was also doing some digging. And a lot came up about his immigration status. So interested, basically what got brought up was the 2003 U.S. Department of Justice removal proceeding. So getting him out of the country. He was basically living in the U.S. with a warrant out for his arrest because his student visa had expired or something. So if he left, he wouldn't be able to get back in, kind of a thing.
Right.
So, but on one of the forms, it said the business that him and his brothers used to obtain those visas to the U.S.
Right.
And they took that and went to that location, which were those same small shops in that strip mall.
Same strip mall
in
yeah.
Jakarta.
Yeah.
So things are like starting to come full circle here. It turns out Rudy was not just a wine collector. And there is a lot of people and stuff out there that he did legitimately collect bottles, sell some legitimate bottles, all the things. It wasn't like all completely counterfeit, but he was running a full-scale counterfeit wine operation right out of his LA mansion.
That's right.
That his mother lived in.
Yeah.
So like someone please make that make sense. And how that
Probably had no clue what was going on.
oh, or she
It's
was
like my son really likes wine.
but like he likes making wine too, apparently,
Loves
because
his wine. My Rudy loves wine.
probably. So when the FBI raided his home in 2012, they what they found was insane. And honestly, like the pictures and everything that they've like it's crazy seeing
Oh yeah.
this operation. Like I remember the first time I saw it, like my mouth was like on the floor.
Yeah.
Um I actually I even have like a list. Okay, yeah, here we go. Here's what they found. So in the kitchen sink, bottles were in there, their labels were being soaked off. To the right or left of the sink, there were bottles waiting to be labeled. There was corking and uncorking devices. Wine there was like California wines kind of off to the side. There's like a whole mixing station. Notations of what to change on the labels.
Mhm.
Oh my god. Like this is so diabolical. I literally can't. Um I also have a note about something like removing the serial number, which we just got done saying there weren't serial numbers on bottles of wine, so I don't know why I have that. But anyway, basically just removing any
Sure.
potential proof or I don't know, note of what could have been on that prior. There were formulas written on the bottles as well. So like they basically were saying that it was all just like trial and error
Yeah.
in getting these wines to taste
And I mean,
like
he
the real
just had to
thing.
get him. So
Have to get them at least somewhat close
he
because
had to
there could
get.
be
Like, honestly, he could have put a bunch of swill in that bottle,
and
and
would have
people would have not even batted an eye. Like you spend $12,000 for a bottle of wine,
you're not gonna question.
you're not gonna say this tastes like shit.
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, this is the best wine I've ever had. I just spent 12 grand on it. Obviously, it's the best wine I ever had. So you could have put anything in the bottle, and people would have loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's terrifying.
there's like that. There was a scene in the documentary where they're drinking this bottle of wine. It's a Northern Rhone wine made from Syrah, and
Yeah.
they're tasting it and like, oh, this is the best wine. Oh my god, oh, it's so crazy, blah blah blah, douche this, douche that, and then like, and then some other guy comes up and like, here, try it, and he's like, this isn't the wine. This is terrible. I have this wine. I've tried it many times. I'm very familiar with it. This is not what it tastes like. And they're like, what? Really? What? Yeah, this is a Rudy wine. What? Yeah.
A Rudy wine. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
So it's like, man, people are gonna believe what they want to believe.
yeah.
Like,
Power of suggestion, like I was saying earlier.
yeah, I mean, if someone opens up a super expensive bottle, you're not gonna say, dude, this tastes like shit.
You're like, this is questionable.
You're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is fantastic.
Mm.
That's what
Gotta be
it is.
so careful. I won't even go down the rabbit hole of pricing on wines. But anyway. Yeah, so there was formula written on the bottles. There was thousands of labels. So these labels that he printed, I guess did he have a printer in his house? I'm trying to remember where
They never
he had
mentioned anything
I
like
swear
that.
they mentioned something about the printer. But anyway, somehow printed thousands of labels. This I thought was fascinating. The thermostat in the house was set to 63 degrees,
Right.
but they used space heaters where they
Yeah, in this multi-million-dollar house.
what
Yeah.
the hell? There were, stencils. There was a whole storeroom of wine, old wooden crates, hundreds, probably thousands of corks. Just, I mean, just crazy. And also, so that billionaire Bill Koch that I mentioned, I think I did mention, he launched his own investigation. He himself had found fake labels, modern glue. So
Like Elmer's glue.
yes. So literally I have I feel like I had something about that. But yeah, it was supposed to be this
Yeah, it's like
thing
a
from like
19
18 whatever.
Yeah, it's
or
a
maybe
1940s wine with Elmer's glue, and
or
Elmer's glue
maybe
wasn't even invented until like the 1970s.
it was that quote Thomas Jefferson wine.
Yeah, it could have
It
been.
might have been that
Could
one.
have been.
Anyway, as I mentioned earlier, that Thomas Jefferson wine, it was all totally fake. Yeah. Complete
Yeah, they're all
fabrication.
fake wines. Yeah.
Yep. But that Bill Koch, I can't remember what he said he spent on those. I think he had 6 bottles.
He said he spent $100,000 each.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was each?
Mm-hmm.
God, I thought it was
Yeah, he
for
said
all of
he
that.
spent $100,000 on each bottle. Yeah.
Oh my God. I'd be so mad. Yeah. Elmer's glue on, it was either that wine or wines like that. So, and another thing that he mentioned, I think when they were tasting some of these wines, the wine was like too fresh. It was just, it just throwing all the red flags.
Yeah.
So it's really funny because prior to this raid, that Jeff Levy director guy I was mentioning earlier, he like called Rudy. I think he reached out to him at one point and was like, "This is like getting really serious. Like agents are onto you." And it was so funny because Rudy said, and I quote, "Don't worry, dude. I have everything under control." Yeah, you do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's funny because Jeff and even I think maybe at least one or two other people in this documentary are either still almost to this day in denial that he either did it or did it by himself. And so I think there's this whole other like piece to this
Well,
documentary that
yeah.
they thought his family was involved
There's
because
no way. Yeah, I mean, all the wine that he sold wasn't fake.
right. So that's
He
that's what I
had
was trying to
real
get.
wines too. Like,
Yeah,
there's no way he could have counterfeited all those wines by himself.
right.
He would have had to have like a team of people and like they're
There's thousands, right?
dedicated. Yeah,
Yeah.
dedicated to like making fake wines throughout the days. Like, there's just no way he could have done it himself.
Yeah.
Sure, he could do a couple bottles. I would imagine he could do, a handful of bottles like per week or whatever.
Right. It takes time.
Yeah, like
I
there's no
mean,
way.
the soaking it off, the figuring out the like formulas to
Yeah,
make each
there's just
wine
no
and
way
like
he
all
could have
these
done it
things. It's
himself,
just
like
interesting.
that many wines, but
Yeah.
few here and there, sure.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no
Yeah.
problem.
So a lot of people are in not denial about that, but anyway, they just kind of don't believe that he was like sort of acting alone. His defense attorney, this Jeff guy, um, that Jeff Levy was even like, he has ADD. He doesn't even have the attention span for this. Like, it's a time consuming thing. He couldn't even like see him doing it, but
I mean, he for
I
sure
think
did
he
some. I
pretty
mean,
sure did
saw
something.
his house. Like, obviously, he was
Yeah.
making some fake wines. It's
Yeah.
just how many did he make? Who knows? I don't think it was like a massive number though.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the thing. So there was also notebooks upon notebooks in evidence
Sure.
that were Rudy's notebooks. And this is what I was saying earlier, as far as like looking at bottles and everything, like forensically. There was someone in the documentary that said, we can go in at each of these bottles and all the things and look at everything forensically to see,
Mhm.
kind of what was down to like, embossment on labels and all of the things. And I think there was actually, yeah, there was uh, a typo on one of the labels,
Yeah, it
wasn't
was
there?
on
It
an
was like,
importer. It was a typo on an importer label. It was
yeah,
the address was misspelled.
it had like
Uh,
I
It had two
L
E's on it
E and
versus yeah.
ILLE or
It
something
was
like
just a
that. It's
misspelling,
just,
yeah.
yeah, but those little things like that's
Mhm.
the kind of shit that's gonna get you. Yeah. So
The other thing too is like I don't know, I'm not 100% on this, but I was told that these really, really expensive wines now at restaurants, because of wine counterfeiting and stuff, you're not allowed to keep those bottles. So, like, if you go to, like, the French Laundry and you buy a bottle of DRC and it's, $15,000, you're not allowed to keep that bottle. They have to break the bottle.
what?
So, yeah, you finish the wine, obviously, but then they take it out to, like, the dumpster and they have to literally break the bottle,
So no one
smash
tries to
it.
counterfeit it?
So, yeah, they have to smash it so no one can counterfeit it.
Oh, that seems cruel.
Mm.
Oh, well, at least someone's drinking the wine like the
I
wine
have
maker.
a empty bottle of DRC.
You do?
I do. Yeah.
Or maybe I did. I just
I don't
forgot.
know.
Don't go spreading that information. You
Well,
never
it's only
know.
like it's empty bottle.
What vintage was it?
That was the
Was that the one that
72.
you had?
Mhm.
That's so
Mhm.
cool. Oh, we need that one. We need to like frame it in the house
Mm.
somewhere. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of conspiracy about, like I said, his family being involved, his mom's brothers. So I guess his uncles,
Mm.
were also
Criminals.
criminals. I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. Yeah, one is responsible for the biggest bank heist in Jakarta history. The other one did also something sus. Yeah, so there's just this. Oh, and also in 2007, he wired $17 million to one of his brothers or both of his brothers, however
Yeah.
many freaking brothers, in Hong Kong and in Indonesia.
Right.
So, there's just this question, or there was this question, like, who created this guy, right? Like, I feel like people don't just like, well, that's not true. People can just get into things because they get into it.
Mhm.
But I think there's a lot of speculation on like, who created this monster,
Mhm.
and where he got all of this money from, because he had to have had some money,
Yeah,
right?
he had to
Going
get
into
started.
it.
He had to
Yeah, to get
be able to
started
buy
for all
these
this.
wines and try them.
Right.
Yeah. So was getting money funneled. I was always under the impression that his
Maybe it's from
brother
the
or his
bank heist.
uncle, was like like sending him money somehow
Right.
and from the bank heist, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if we know all of that or if that's all been confirmed. It's alleged, I guess. But unless we totally missed something. But yeah. So anyway,
But like
have
his wines basically now, like once they come out and be like, "Oh, these wines are counterfeit." Now like your reputation is like
yeah,
shot, and now no one wants any wine or that has anything to do with your wine cellar.
right.
So,
So in case anyone's wondering what happened to good old Rudy, in 2013 he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was the first person ever convicted of wine fraud in the U.S.
yeah, and like the FBI was investigating it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because there was no wine fraud department in the FBI. There was an art fraud.
Mm-hmm.
And so wine
Makes
being
sense.
like a form of art,
Mm.
this department, the art fraud, kind of like was the ones that investigated it all. And now they have like forensic wine like specialists in the FBI
Yeah.
that kind of investigate different wine fraud
All
situations.
because
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, and he was ordered to pay $28.4 million back to victims that
Mm.
he sold fraudulent wine to. I don't know if he
Yeah,
did
because
that or
the auction house that he was working with,
Acker,
Acker
Merrill,
Maryland
and I'll
Condit,
find it. Yeah,
Acker
who
Maryland Condit, they sold
gave
like
him advances and stuff.
they
That's a whole
sold.
nother part
I
of this.
think that it said like 30 some odd $1 million worth of
Yes.
his wine they
Yeah.
sold.
Yep. I think it was, yep, I have a note here. I think it was like 35. It was crazy. And yeah, like I said, like it got to a point with him that they would like front him
Yeah, he'd be like, "Hey, I
that
need,
money.
$1 million," and they would basically give him $1 million because then he would come back with, this huge amount of wine for them to auction off and make them a bunch of money.
Yeah. But ultimately just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So
Yeah, it's
which
like
is
any
never gonna end
it's
well.
like any pyramid scheme where,
Yeah.
You rob this person to pay this person, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Yep. I don't know how anyone ever thinks that's gonna work. Anyway, I digress. And in 2021, so he got out of prison, but he was deported back to Indonesia after serving his time. And he had said, "Wine became my life, and I lost myself in it. An obsession that will be hard to pursue behind bars." That's what he said as he was about to go to prison. How poetic. And it's funny. I'd be curious, actually, DM us, send us an email. I'm really curious if you, as a listener, think that 10 years behind bars is justified. Several people feel, at least from this
Yeah,
document, that was
the
too
defense
long.
attorneys for him were like,
Yeah.
10 years
Even his
is
friends thought it was too long. These people that he knowingly gave these wines to, or
Yeah.
like even sold, like feel that 10 years was too long.
Well, the defense attorney was quoted in the documentary saying, like, "I've done cases where there were
Yeah.
people that had died and been murdered, and they got less than 10 years.
Yeah.
But this guy, it's a white collar crime, and he's like, 10 years."
Yeah. Because their whole argument was like, so bad. But like, kind of who really got hurt here? Like, right. As far as we know, there wasn't a death. There wasn't like anything crazy.
No.
So they're kind of just like, okay, what, like you said, blue collar crime, right? Like
Red
it's
collar
like
or white collar
white
crime.
collar. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, wait. Kind of what's the damage? People are out thousands, maybe millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
but these people are rich people, right? That's what
Yeah.
they're saying. They're like, "Oh, so the rich people wasted their
them.
money. They're just rich, whatever.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so
and it was
the old Robin Hood situation.
yeah. And Bill Koch too. I mean, he was saying that like he was talking to one of the auction houses, probably that Acker, Merrill, whatever. And they I felt that vibe didn't really take responsibility. They were like, you bought it. It was kind of your problem. Like I remember there was something to that effect in that documentary where it was kind of like too bad. Like you bid on it, you bought it, like kind of you assume responsibility for it. But I literally remember saying to you out loud, I
Yeah.
was like, well, that's interesting because I feel like the auction house also
I feel like I
needs
heard
to be
I did hear that
authenticating everything.
they did pay back people if their wine was like proven to be
Oh, interesting.
counterfeit.
Okay, so maybe he was one of them. Yeah, I
So
don't know.
they did pay back some of the people that the wine was proven to be counterfeit, but
Okay.
I don't know.
At their hands, sort
I
of.
don't know how much it was. Though.
Yeah, yeah. But it's interesting. I mean, last thing here before we wrap up, but it's it's funny and interesting because there's probably still thousands of bottles out there in circulation, mostly because people don't want to like admit that they maybe have
Yeah.
a counterfeit bottle or that they don't.
As soon as
They
you
don't
say
know
where
and
it's
don't-
from, now no one wants it.
Yeah, yeah. And it sucks because maybe he actually did sell a legitimate wine and someone might have a legitimate wine of his, but like you just never really know.
Yeah.
I guess unless you were to get it looked at or something. But yeah, it's like they either have it and don't know and don't want to know, or they have it and they know and they don't want to say anything because they don't want to be like associated
Sure.
with this or have someone.
Yeah. And then your wine
Question
is
them.
now useless
Yeah.
or worthless, I should say.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that is the very scandalous story of Rudy Kurniawan and one of the greatest, but probably the greatest so far to our knowledge, written knowledge,
Oh yeah.
wine fraud scandal of all
I
time.
don't think. Yeah.
Crazy.
No one will ever be able to do it again because they're kind of like.
No, and technology and everything, it's just getting better. I mean,
Well, I mean,
I don't know.
You
I mean,
can
I
say
guess
that
someone
for
could
the
do it.
counterfeiters too. Technology's getting better, so they can make better fakes.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bet someone could do it on like a smaller scale, maybe, or something. You know, if someone was more like careful, he made blatant mistakes.
Sure.
Like he got super lazy and sloppy.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how I feel.
Again, he
Like couldn't be bothered to
should have
look
quit
up
while he was
like-
ahead.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. Like I mean, to get a vintage wrong to the point where it like wasn't even being sold at that point. Like,
Yeah.
sir,
He was probably like,
come out.
he didn't even think about it. It's like, why would they not have made this bottle in this
Right.
year?
Like someone's not going to notice.
yeah. But yeah,
Anyway, juicy stuff. That's a fun story.
Yeah.
I want to do more of these on the podcast. These are fun.
yeah,
These are kind of fun pop culture things, which by the way, if you ever heard our intro or kind of are just getting familiar with the podcast, we love pop culture stuff like this, but I think it's really fun tying it into like food, drink, and travel. So yeah, these are fun little stories.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us in this one. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know if you did. Let us know your thoughts on this whole situation. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us and tuning into the Taste Toast Travel Podcast. We really appreciate you being here and hope you're enjoying these honest conversations about all things sipping, savoring, and seeing the world. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, we would truly appreciate a rating or review on whatever platform you're tuning in on so fellow foodies, Epicureans, and travel enthusiasts can enjoy this content too. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a follow at Taste Toast Travel. We'll see you in the next episode.